back to the Pod of Thrones continuing coverage of San Diego Comic-Con 2019. I'm Jeff. Jennifer is not here, unfortunately. She had to leave Comic-Con early to go take care of some parenting stuff, and perhaps we will talk about that when she gets back. But for now, I don't want to jinx anything, but she's off doing something kind of cool with her son. So she cannot be here to talk about this, which is unfortunate because she was liking this as much as I was liking this. Here we have something new that we discovered. A book called Alexander X, which is not just a book. It is a series of books, but the first book I have just been going through recently, and it is wonderful. Really wonderful. It's a really interesting book. And I say this in the beginning of the interview you're about to hear, but it has sort of a Highlander feel to it. If you're familiar with Highlander and the Immortals, these people that, basically live forever. Well, in Highlander, they're killing each other all the time, right? That's sort of the crux of the show, is that these guys sort of have to kill each other. It's what they do. In Alexander X, that is not the case. So it is quite a bit different. It's not just about murder, but it is about these people that have been living for thousands of years, in some cases, and have taken up very pivotal roles in history. So our main character, and this takes place in the modern age, our main character, Alexander, is a teenager by all accounts, except he's actually 1,500 years old. So he looks like he's about 15, 14, 16, somewhere in there. But he is not. He is far, far older than that. So he has a wide range of knowledge and skills in history to call upon because he's done many fascinating things in his life, but he's also going to high school. And then stuff happens. And I don't want to tell you what the stuff is, but there's intrigue, there's action, there's a big reveal that leads into the second book that's coming out. So this book was published a few years ago, and it was just recently republished with an audiobook by the one and only amazingly wonderful Wil Wheaton. Now the second book is coming out on July 30th. So that is just any day now. I think we're a week away, a little bit more than a week away. So I was able to have an interview with Edward Savio. He is the writer of the book, as well as his producer, Lisa Lindo. And they just sat down with me for a while, and we talked about the book, and we got some exclusive info about some of the background of the book. We found out the inspirations for the book. We got a special offer to share with you guys. Not just you guys, but anyone that's really digging the book, there's a cool thing that you can get. So that's all talked about, but please look in the show notes. I'm going to have links to where you can buy the book, as well as the Audible audiobook, which is amazing. That's what I've been using to get my Alexander X fix. And I'm going to be listening to the second version on audiobook as well, because Wil Wheaton comes back and he's a wonderful narrator. So there's those, and a link to the website, battleforforever.com, where you can also get the bonus material. So there's a free mini, ebook novella, that gives you more information on the world. All you have to do is post about, Alexander X on social media, and you can then get it for free. So follow the link to do that, and just check out the book, guys. I mean, I'm not messing around with you. It is definitely a cool series of books worth reading. I'm looking forward to getting number 2, and I will definitely be there for number 3. I'm excited for this, and I think if you give it a chance, you will be excited too. So take a listen, and let me know what you think. You can reach me at Pod of Thrones, of course, and once again, look in the show notes or go to battleforforever.com to learn more about the book and where to buy it, and of course, the author, Edward Savio. Here we go. Enjoy. All right, so we are here today to talk about a wonderful book called Alexander X, or a series of books about Alexander X, and I'm here with the author, Edward Savio, and the producer, Lisa Lindo. Why don't you say hi?
Hi, thank you for having us, Jeffrey.
My voice is much deeper, actually.
I went down for the...
You did, yeah.
Good morning, Jeffrey.
So thanks for joining us. I've been reading the Alexander, or listening to... I consider that reading. I don't think audiobooks are any different than reading a regular book. You're getting the material. It's a lot of fun, very entertaining. So I've been reading Alexander X, the first book. I've been loving it. I'm not quite done with it yet, I'm afraid to say. But I will be within the next 24 hours because I can't stop.
Oh, yay.
But, okay, so I want to talk about maybe the inspirations. There's definitely a taste of Highlander in my mouth. It's not all the way there, but it feels like there might be some inspiration there for some of the immortality. What do you think?
It's funny. It's like I never saw Highlander.
Really?
I never
No way.
did. I know.
What?
Everyone is, by the way,
What?
you can't
Wait,
see
this
this,
is
but everyone
Why
is.
do we allow him in public?
Everyone is staring at me. After writing the first book, I watched Highlander and I went, "Oh, I get it." Because people are saying, I get it." It's funny because I'm a screenwriter first, and as a screenwriter, you know, Highlander was always this thing that people talked about. They were like, "It's great, but there's interesting missing parts to it. But the fans love it." And it was just something that I never got into. But the inspiration for me, right, about this, there's two inspirations. One was comedy. And I know that sounds very strange, but I wanted to create a character that could do a ridiculous number of things great.
Okay.
Right? Was just ridiculous. You know, who would win a chess championship and Wimbledon championship, you know, within 24 hours. Who could who could fly planes and race cars and all of that. And we would find out in this comedy, because I'm a screenwriter, we would find out in this comedy that he was not perhaps 35 years old, but he was maybe 150 years old. And he had all this time in the world to practice. And I put that in the drawer for a while, and I was writing and thinking about writing sci-fi. I love sci-fi, and I was thinking about writing something for my teenage boys, and something that would deal with something they would like. And I also had, I think, like every writer, every person, we have this dream of immortality. Right, we want to live longer, right?
I do.
Yeah, exactly. So it came about like, what if it wasn't one person? What if it was a group of people? What if it wasn't one life or two lifetimes that they lived, but what if it was 100? And what would happen if all of those people, those, not just the 1500, 1600, 1700, because these people age one day for every 100 days, so 15 or 17-year-old looking kid is 1,500 years old. But what about those people that are 4,000 years old and 4,500 years old? People who have been the most famous kings, queens, warriors, generals in history. What would they do if after 100 years of our modern society, where they couldn't ever become great again because they would be outed, right? They couldn't pretend to die and be someone else. What would they do? What would their response be? Because part of the book is kind of this fun thing where we're like, oh, we get to do all these great things. But the other part of the book is, what's the consequence?
Right.
What's the consequence?
And I think Highlander absolutely was in the ethos, but also a Jason Bourne kind of sensibility. Like not knowing exactly who you are, having incredible abilities that you've been trained to do, and then when you use them, having that moment of, I can't believe I just did that to another human.
Right,
you know?
Especially when it's not someone who's in the know. There was a...
Yes.
He gets mugged in the park and he breaks some dude's arm, and that guy never saw it coming, right?
Never saw it coming, and he's just, and that's his response, and he's like, he even thought, I could have responded differently, but I was just a little too tired of dealing with people.
Yeah, I mean, it had been a long day.
It had been a long day for him, yes.
Also, when we started, he had 2 novellas that got put together to become Alexander X, and when those 2 novellas came my way and we started working together again, because I used to be his agent back in the 90s. I'm really old. When we started working together again, we gave that to some really good old friends. So Jeff Gomez of Starlight Runner Entertainment, who creates persistent worlds for like the entire Pirates of the Caribbean franchise when it went from ride to film series, for Men in Black, for Spider-Man, for Ninja Turtles, for Avatar. He gave us some great notes that became that novella, but also Doug Lyman and his executive producer, Gene Klein. asked some really great questions. So literally the Jason Bourne franchise, because we thought they would know exactly what to do with this. They would know that this would be a transmedia franchise and where to put it. So they're not working with us yet. I would love for it to be reality, but they did give us a lot of feedback that helped inform how we created the journey, how Edward created the world, with Alexander X being more of an Iron Man introduction to an MCU universe. Alexander is an introduction into a much bigger world that we'll discover not only in book 2,
right,
which dropped yesterday, the pre-order link, so that people will be able to start listening and reading on July 30th, but also a 12,000 word novella that's being told by a different voice.
Really?
Yeah, that's going to be dropped for super fans that they'll have access to, called
/Bloodborne.
Bloodborne.
Yeah.
Bloodborne, yeah.
Oh.
And it actually opens up a lot of... It's interesting because one of the things that these other people asking this question did, and my kids who are, now 17 and 19, they're my brain trust. So all of these people have asked amazing questions, which have forced me. My kids, by the way, are not like, "Oh, Dad, you're a great writer." They're like, "I'm glad you're a really good writer because we couldn't deal with it if you weren't. And if you want to be great, here's what you need to do." And I'm like, really? Why don't you go out and sit here? Come over here, sit down.
We have teenagers at home. I get it.
You get it.
They know a lot.
They do, but in this world, and like in this sort of Comic-Con fantasy sci-fi world, as much as I've always been a sci-fi nut, I love sci-fi. They don't have any other things to remember in their lives. No, they don't have any other things in their lives to remember. So they remember all the crap that we don't remember about comic books and sci-fi and everything. And they can go, "Hey, here's this reference point." Where I'm like, what is that? So anyway, that's the long answer.
All right.
Yeah, when we first dropped the book, about a couple of weeks in, we had this crazy jump in sales. It was insane. And all of a sudden, on Amazon author rank, number 1 was George R.R. Martin for action adventure fiction.
Well, what are you going to do?
Right, right. Of course.
Of course.
Number 2 was J.K. Rowling.
Sure.
And number 3 was Edward Savio.
Wow.
I know, right? So it's kind of a crazy day. And for a minute, he was number 2 for all of Audible, for any book. And his son comes in, he goes, "Well, number 2.
You're not number 1.
Well, let's talk about that. Okay, so Audible. Personally, I love audiobooks. I love podcasts. I listen to a lot of stuff.
Yes.
It all started when I drove to California from Wisconsin 16, 17 years ago. But since then, I've had commutes and I spend a lot of time in my car and I just love listening to content. So the audiobook of this was a great follow-up. I think the last audiobook I listened to, and I listened a couple times, was Ready Player One.
Yep.
Nice!
So seeing Wil Wheaton's name attached to this, of course, is a draw. Now, how does that happen? How does Wil Wheaton come? He doesn't do a lot of audiobook narration.
He doesn't. So he doesn't. So number 1. So the 2 books that made me want Wil Wheaton, like that I absolutely, I'm like, please, I need to get Wil Wheaton, were Ready Player One and John Scalzi's Red Shirts.
I don't know that one.
And Red Shirts is if you like Star Trek at all.
Yeah, that's the first thing that came to mind. I'm like, is it Star Trek related?
It's kind of a Star Trek related.
No, not at all.
Oh no,
no, it is.
It is. It's basically, it's kind of like if the Red Shirts were telling the story in this fictionalized Star Trek sort of universe, Star Trek-ish universe, and they just begin to realize they're on a television show, and if they get picked, they're going to be off, and so they're all like, I've got to I got to go pick up this other stuff. They're always trying to run away from wherever.
Have to check that out. For sure.
It's really great. Okay. So with Ready Player One, Ready Player One, and it's got the action, it's got it's got comedy, it's got all of those things. Ernie Klein, great, and John Scalzi, the snark, like he's really wonderful with both procedural things and sci-fi, and so you put those two things together, and I went, Like, I hear this. And so I said, there was one person on my list. It was Wil Wheaton, and everyone said, yeah, Wil Wheaton doesn't do a lot of books. Wil Wheaton doesn't do, he chooses certain things. And I said to Lisa, here's some information. And she found.
Yeah. So, okay. So the backstory is my dogs are named Princess Deanna Troy of Bell Pass because we got her at the Taco Bell at Grants Pass, and Duchess Layla Dax of Amish, and Baroness Jadzia Dax. Okay, so I'm a little tiny bit of a Trekkie.
You're a little bit of a Trekkie.
Share this with other people.
I was getting that. I was getting that.
I might have Star Trek decorations on my Christmas tree. I'm not either confirming nor denying. But so when he said Wil Wheaton, instantly I was intrigued. Obviously, I appreciate him as an adult. I appreciate all his work on Big Bang Theory, doing a different version of himself. And
so much fun.
The concept of a 1,500-year-old trapped in the mind and body of a 15-year-old just sort of fit.
Yeah.
And Edward had done some research, and he knew that he really only worked with Skyboat Media, and they're fantastic, and that's a space that Wil loves working with. So we contacted Gabrielle Decure, who is fantastic as a director, and we contacted Stefan Rudnicki and Wil's agents over at Vox, and we made it happen. And I just kept, said, you guys have to take a look at the book. And Skyboat got back to us within 24 hours of getting the book. It's just been like Kismet has taken care of us all along the way. And they said, we're going to tell him it's in his wheelhouse. And the next thing I know, I'm producing an audiobook with Wil Wheaton. Now, of the authors that Wil has read for, there's a handful that he's done two for.
More than one book. Right.
Yeah, more than one book, right, basically. There's Scalzi, there's Mark Twain.
Well,
Ernie Klein.
Right. So, and Nebula award-winning, but for us, although Edward's written before, he's not a name in the sci-fi space, right? So we just feel so fortunate and humbled and blessings on blessings that he was like, I'm in. So that was the get. That was the Wil Wheaton get. That's why I got to be producer.
And that's
wow.
Right, and that's why you got to listen to this. And I hope that, my job now is to make sure that this is going forward good enough for everybody to stay with it. But that's the door opener, right?
Yes,
because people go
absolutely.
And I think, when I heard the first 5 paragraphs of the book, I went, I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
It was
he's
such
doing
a
this.
smart
me
choice.
too. Listening to it, once I started, I didn't really want to stop. I've been busy, so I had to. But he's a fantastic narrator, but he also does a great job with the voices. And you listen to it, and you go, there's good and bad audiobooks out there.
Yes, of course.
There's some where it's just a guy reading like this, and you.
Wil doesn't read. I feel like Wil performs.
He performed. Well, I'm sure he definitely went through the book first, and he figured out like this is what this person's going to sound like. Here's an accent for here, and he's studying up on like obscure types of British accents that might sound slightly African. Like he really runs the gamut. Like he put a lot into it, and it's an incredibly impressive work.
He did his research. He brought his soul into the first recording and the second recording. And we even took a little extra time with the second recording from what we had originally scheduled so that he could bring a little more to it. And also, the world grew a lot after the first recording. So we originally were thinking it's a trilogy. Edward was saying, look, if it becomes something amazing, we'll do 3 in pre-apocalyptic world and maybe 2 in a apocalyptic world and maybe more in a post-apocalyptic world, but I'm only committing to 3. And then once you hear it and it's up on its legs, and you hear the world being filled in, it's so informed by the performance, and Edward just got really inspired, and the world grew. He saw all the other characters, so many more characters to come.
Right. But
and now it's 4 books.
Yes, it is 4 books, and it's 4 books, and I feel like that's going to be the story of this arc. There's other stories that are great, like the side story with Bloodborne that tell one of the things I want to do, which is I'm going to say this actually for the first time.
The Easter egg thing?
Ooh. Well, no. I'm going to say it for the first time, which is
I like an exclusive.
It is exclusive. So Bloodborne is this novella. And so it's a long short story, short novella. But what I want to do is by the end of the 4 books, I want to have at least 4 of these novellas put together, and they would be from very different characters and angles, people that are important to the story, but we don't spend as much time with them because it's a first-person book told from Alexander's point of view. But you can not read these novellas and get the books, but if you read these, you're going to get a completely different character. There's a character coming up in book 2 that is just, she's about 2,000 years old, and she has had to deal with crap as a woman for, just that women have to deal with, but she's had to deal with it for a lot longer, and she's a little tired of it, and
she's a badass.
She's a badass.
And she's an eternal, stateless, intelligence gathering spy, perhaps.
Nice.
Yeah, something. It's not, but all of, and so it's nice. So what I'm doing is I want to have, and all of them will be this / that's the part,
standalone side stories.
So when I put them all together, they'd be just the / story. So it'd be /
So we could do an anthology of those 4 novellas, and we're excited about
tell
that.
the world.
What pops into my head as you're describing this character too is Black Widow. She's not super, quote unquote.
That's right.
But she's just extraordinarily skilled in a lot of different areas. It would make more sense if Black Widow was 2,000 years old.
That's right. Exactly. Very much.
Yeah, I definitely get a lot of mental visual images of Black Widow exactly in some of the scenes that are in that book. Not because they're like that, just because that's where your brain goes. It really does.
Yeah.
It's I think if you would look at classic versions of this would be, La Femme Nikita, Black Widow, Carrie Moss's character in The Matrix.
Oh, sure. Trinity,
Trinity. I mean, those type of characters, along with this.
Arya Stark.
Yeah.
Did you say Arya Stark?
Yes, I did.
Did you just whisper? You can't whisper Arya Stark when you're on Pot of Thrones. You have to say it out loud.
I'm just trying, but that's the truth. Arya, we weren't exposed to Arya when he was creating this, but really, that's
right. Right. It's sort of a
way beyond 3 years.
Again, I mean, you're just reeling me in deep. That's nice. That's nice.
Well, and that's what's also funny about this is that we're starting out as a singular hero journey,
right?
And it becomes a more collective journey as it moves on. So it seems like this traditional, Joseph Campbell, one person against the world and against the fates and all that, and becomes something more.
In terms of the world building, I mean, look, since you're going to reference Game of Thrones, I'm going to stick with that. What kept striking me about Game of Thrones when I look back over the seasons is how it started as this very gritty, realistic, and then in the last episode of season 1, dragons get born, but very gritty, very realistic type of, it's almost not fantasy. It's just medieval. Right?
Yes.
But then it gets more fantastical as the world keeps building and things keep changing and people keep getting new skills and finding out more stuff about the situation they're in. So, do you how does this world evolve then as time goes on?
So I think, this world is very realistic in a lot of ways. The fantasy / sci-fi device is a singular thing that they age at a certain point, right?
And it's they don't really they're not immune to injury, but they produce stem cells. And you have science ideas kind of backing it up, which allows them to regenerate. It's not like Wolverine, it's not like Highlander, but it is sort of regenerative. It's more regenerative than most, right?
It's especially right. And it's also evolutionary because the backstory, right?
Ooh, he hasn't said this in an interview yet.
I haven't said the backstory.
Anywhere.
The backstory is that this is based on a virus, and that took place 12, 13, 14,000 years ago, and basically killed 90% of the people
that were
exposed to it in a small area. And of those people that were left, those people had some immunity to obviously this, and it gave them a little bit longer life. And a little bit longer. And as they sort of morphed, one of the things that, and I don't know if it's in the first book, but it is in the second book, which is where it's this idea of, it's not just that they're a little immune, it's that it's natural selection. There are people who were born eternal, who would have aged one day for every 100 days, but they never make it past toddler years.
Yeah, the toddler years.
Toddler years, because they would have gotten cancer or something. So what it is that they are the cream of the crop. There are people in this world right now, really and truly, that do not get concussions at the rate that normal people get them because of certain brain chemistry and things like that. And other people are more susceptible. So what it is that this device allowed me to say, all right, what's the science if I can push it? And if we take that to the nth degree over 10,000 years, what would it be?
So originally, people are living, back, 40 years, then 70 years. And so they're learning to take care of their children over a longer period of time. Then it's 150 years.
Then it's wild.
Hundreds of years. Then, so over the generations, they get to where they are now. So it's a slow burn. It isn't suddenly, so they've learned how to protect themselves, and they have sort of some sort of natural defenses with the virus itself. And so they are insulated for a long time before they're suddenly now people that are aging. It takes 100 years just to age a year. So you're sitting as a teenager in 13 for 100 years, in 14 for 100 years, in high school for 100 years. That's 15.
And in terms of the world building, I think it's, in terms of like whether there's more powers, I think it's more when we meet other people and who they've been, it's kind of like, it's more about who have these people been in history.
Yeah.
And what did they bring to the table, whether it's tactically, intellectually, and how that affects the greater world and the story.
Every time that Alexander has one of those flashbacks, it always hits me very cinematically in my head too.
Yeah.
And a lot of that probably does come from Highlander, admittedly, because if you've seen the movies or the TV series since, there's always a flashback to and I'm thinking back to the time when I knew, I don't know, Louis the 14th or something.
Right.
Yeah. And it's interesting how he gets placed in these places in history, but it forms the foundation then, and you flash forward again, and it's like, well, I'm remembering this lesson I learned 1,000 years ago, or hundreds of years ago, and that's going to help me figure out how to get out of this particular situation I'm in.
But it's also an Achilles heel, because you are overwhelmed by deja vu when you approach a situation from all the other times that you've been in a situation. It's almost debilitating.
Sometimes you just have to go on reflex, I guess, and then you wind up breaking some poor mortal's arm. I mean, what does the future hold in terms of... Because I picture this as like... I don't want to be out of turn, but like a Netflix series or something.
Oh, you're not out of turn. You're in turn. Get in line. You're in turn.
I don't know.
That's the goal.
It just strikes me as something that people would love to watch.
Oh, I love you so much. From your lips to the GOT God ears. There's no question that's the goal. We want to be able to share all the visuals with a generation, and then maybe a next generation that are going to fall in love with it as it grows, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
and what's fun about this is that I'm taking a bit of a risk in the direction that we go, but I think the risk pays off because it gives us something we don't normally see, and this isn't necessarily playing out exactly the way that a normal storyline plays out. Like I said, good guys are bad guys are good guys. They're doing them for their own reason. And one of the things we've seen with Game of Thrones is that, you can love characters that don't do lovely things.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah. And, but we need to know why they're doing them.
Also, like Game of Thrones, so there's the first season, it's pretty more reality based, and then you've got dragons. If you are a fan of Anne McGaffrey at all, or the Dragon Riders, it starts out with dragons and then goes backwards till you realize it's actually just us on another planet, that we had to develop small birds into bigger birds, and so we forgot that technology. Well, it's like we're doing the opposite track. We're starting in the mundane world, and then it becomes more what looks like magic, what looks like fantasy, but it's all based on science and reality. And then we forget eventually our library of Alexander knowledge that we have as we go down the road. And so things will look like magic that aren't magic.
Well, who was it Asimov or Arthur C. Clarke? I can't remember whose quote that was. Arthur C. Clarke, which is magic is just science we haven't learned to understand yet, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, what is it? It was something like any sufficiently advanced science will seem like magic. Something like that.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
That's it.
And it's like, you're like, it's a great quote, right?
It really is.
And, I think about that stuff. It's funny because I wanted to create a magical, story without magic. I wanted to create a superhero, story without superhero powers, and I wanted to make sure because, all superpowers are cool, but if I had to choose one superpower, if the one superpower would be more time.
Yeah.
More time.
I absolutely agree.
And that's their superpower. They're not smarter than anyone else. They just have more time.
To get great at everything.
At everything.
How are we doing on time?
5 more minutes.
Okay, so let's finish talking about the book real quick, and then I have some side questions now because of the direction you guys took the conversation, not me. But the book. Okay, so the book that's out already. So if you haven't read Alexander X, it's already available on Amazon. It's available on Audible, anywhere fine books are sold.
Yes.
Correct.
And
there's a trailer online at bit.ly/AX trailer. They can see a trailer for the first book.
Okay. And we'll link to that in the show notes for sure.
Wonderful.
As well as the book. And then the pre-order for book number 2. And what's book number 2 called?
It's called Ancient Among Us.
Ancient Among Us. That's right. I have that written down somewhere.
And we've got a bit.ly for Ancient Among Us too, which is Ancient Among Us.
Perfect. Okay. And that just became available for pre-order today or yesterday.
Yesterday. Here.
And actually, it was really cool. We didn't know it was happening yesterday, and fans wrote in and said, "It's up! It's up!"
and it goes live July 30th. So whether you buy the book or the audiobook, July 30th is the day.
Of course, both books are narrated by the great and powerful Wil Wheaton.
Awesome. I hope he's going to... Book 3 is for sure, right? And then do we know if we're going past
it'll
that?
be... Yeah, book 3 and 4 are for sure. And then we would love... I want him to definitely do that. It's going to get it'll be interesting, and we may have to push the narrative of how it gets told. Yeah. But...
as long as he wants to play in our sandbox.
As long as he wants to play in a sandbox.
We're in.
I've got the toys.
Now, since you guys mentioned Game of Thrones, you seem to be fans.
Yes,
absolutely. You've watched the series.
Yes, every episode. I even have a friend.
I'm not sure what happens at the end, though. I
have a friend that makes themed chocolates, truffles. Who studied chocolatiering.
Yes.
Who works at Disney. Who makes unbelievable chocolates that are themed for blood. They taste smoky. Each one is only Game of Thrones themed. They're unbelievable.
Where do I get these?
I know, right? Well, he only serves them at watching parties, and
well, there's not going to be a watching party for a while.
That's what I'm trying to say.
All right, well, just remember me.
Of course.
When the time comes.
Please. Of course.
So how did you guys feel about season 8? There's been ups and downs. Some people love it. Some people hate it. It seems to be very polarizing.
Yeah.
Where did you guys land?
I landed on, there were moments that I really loved it. Right? I really loved some of the moments. And then there were moments where I thought, maybe they needed 2 more episodes.
Yeah.
Like maybe they needed to,
see that.
and not like at the end, but maybe some of those 1 episodes needed, some of the action stuff in life, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that happens is if you don't have the slow moment, the fast moment, just when we're driving at 70 or 80 miles an hour and we slow down, we think like we're going slow.
Right.
Even if we're going 45 or 50, which is a ridiculous speed for a human being to travel, right? But if you're going 2 miles an hour as a person walking, and then you start going 45, it's all of a sudden it's amazing.
It's fascinating.
It's fast.
Right.
And I think there was just moments where the pacing were different. I loved so many of the characters, and it was so much fun to see some of the surprises about the characters. I have only one thing I have to say.
Yes,
one thing, okay?
Please.
Was Cersei's entire season shot on a balcony?
Yes.
Yeah, and with no one else behind her, just maybe a couple people.
Not commanding generals. Okay, so I'm jumping in.
Yes.
As a woman,
She's right there.
As a woman,
Yes.
who was enthralled by the strength and the intelligence and the determination and the journey of the women, to watch them walk away from a revenge fight at the end because someone said you shouldn't do it, or to run a battle from a balcony without speaking to a general, without being tactical, I'm not saying anything that a lot of fans don't say, but as much as I love it, like as much as I love every single visual moment and I want to watch it again and again, betrayal. Betrayal is the word I would use. I feel betrayed that you would let that happen to them, that they would tie it up like that and take away each of the... One woman goes crazy and burns up a town, I love her death, but...
One woman gets hit on the head with a rock.
Yes, right. Yeah.
One woman, the strongest woman in the whole thing, who gets knighted, who's now nominated for an Emmy for her work,
Isn't even
sleeps with a guy arbitrarily and falls in love and kind of gets not that I don't want her to be in love, but did you watch, it was Saturday Night Live? Okay, so Saturday Night Live, just before the episode she sleeps, where she finally loses her virginity. Yeah. They do a parody of the Family Feud.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
And in the parody of Family Feud, they said something like, what you would want, if you only had a night to live. And she says, sleeping with... She said 3 arms, no rules, and it was prescient. There's no way they could have known that was a Saturday.
Yeah.
There's no way they wouldn't have made that joke if they'd known it was actually in the episode. Right? They couldn't have. It wouldn't have been funny if they'd known that was happening. But still, we have a woman who she's vulnerable is great, but you know what I'm saying.
I get it. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So how did you feel?
Well, it's a mixed bag. I erupted with cheers when Arya took down the Night King.
Oh my God, it was amazing.
Yeah, the final episode just left me kind of empty a little bit. Like, it just felt a little anticlimactic. King Bran, I don't know. Who would you have put on the throne?
I think I would have put the last person who wanted it. That would have been Jon Snow.
Yeah.
Like that, he's in so many ways, he's the only one that was worthy of it in a sense, because he didn't want it. And even Bran, who supposedly didn't want it.
It seemed like he wanted it.
He seemed like he wanted it.
Why do you think I'm here?
Why do you think I'm here? Well, and the first thing is, it's like, is this going to really be just the whole, like, your whole reign where I have to ask you a question and you're not going to answer it? And then you're going to go, but I know what's going to happen. It's like, this will get very tiresome, sire. Very tiresome.
I like the idea that everyone's like, all right, we're sending Jon to the north. Bran's the king now. Arya's going to go away. Bye, Grey Worm. Bye. Okay, Grey Worm's gone. Jon, you're king.
Right, exactly. I agree.
Yeah.
Then day 2, right? It's like you wake up and you're like, there's a shower scene. Patrick Dempsey. Not Patrick Dempsey. What's it? Is it Patrick Dempsey? From Dallas. Yeah.
Dallas.
Yeah, right.
Gosh.
Stuart,
No.
Duffy.
Patrick Duffy.
Duffy.
Patrick Duffy.
I went through, I had to go through Star Trek to get to Patrick Duffy.
Right, and Amelia Clark comes in. It's all a dream. I was dreaming.
It's Bob Newhart. It's the last episode of Bob Newhart. That's what this is.
The Bob is the last.
I could live with it if that's what we're talking about.
I
Game of Bob.
About 6-7 years ago, I put up this little thing on Twitter, and it's a picture of Suzanne Plachette in bed with a confused-looking Jon Snow.
Yes!
That's so great.
Not many people got it, but I wish I would have known you back then.
So perfect. No.
Well, I'm really glad we got a chance to meet you now.
Game of Bob. Game of Bob. Game of Bob.
Well, I think that's a great way to go out, because I think it's time to wrap it up. You guys have other people to meet and talk to. I'm sure it's a very busy Comic-Con
Jeffrey,
for you.
thank you very much, by the way, for having me.
Thank you guys so much. This has been a blast, and I will be there on January.
You could be there on January.
July 30th.
Great. And if you see us on the floor today, we did a collaboration with Des Taylor, and we're giving out key art based on the second book.
Des couldn't make it, but yes, art based on the Alexander X books.
He was
book 2 on Ancient Among Us.
I will there's some promo images out there, right? So
yes.
Right
I'll make sure
now,
that we include
and all
those
the
too.
tags you're going to put underneath, if you look at our social media, you can see it right now.
Okay.
Oh, and one last thing.
We'll find that.
I just want to say one last thing.
Yes.
Bloodborne. Okay, we're going to drop that in a few weeks, and that's going to be free. The text version is going to be free.
Very nice.
For anybody who comes.
For a minute, depending on what happens with... This is where the manager steps in. Depending on what happens with...
Audible. But so quickly. But people who come by and just post about the book and show us where they posted it, they can get a link to read this thing for free.
Awesome. So they should find you on social media?
They should find me on social media at Edward Savio, Instagram and Twitter. But you can go to battleforforever.com.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that is all just great news after great news. Love it. Okay. Well, again, thank you guys for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your con.
Thank you very much.
You too.